So today I wanted to get really deep with you in a discussion about how to become unabusable, how to become a radiant being, how to have strength of spirit, how to embody the soul in this physical world, right? And essentially no longer live in lack or fear. But I wanted to specifically call it being unabusable because there's a lot of abuse in this world. I'm not diminishing or pretending like sexual abuse or being born in a war-torn country isn't real. But if we start at this foundational metaphysical principle that I am a soul, I am not a body, I am an eternal soul, and what I am experiencing is something that I chose to experience or need to experience in order to mutate into the next level of the next version of myself. So no creature that has ever mutated, right? Nothing that came out of the sea that grew legs to live on land didn't go through a painful process of mutation where they were growing a whole new part of themselves, right? That process is painful, and we have to accept that pain is part of the process of mutation, of becoming a being of light. So step one, I create my reality. Therefore, the parents in my life are the perfect parents. The city I was born in was the perfect city. The time I was born in was the perfect time. And really, I am this soul with a point of focus that is focused in the physical world, learning from that experience, from that simulation, to be able to develop, to be able to express into physical reality the qualities that I want to express, and perhaps even the ability to help people recover or move through what I have been through. I find it so interesting that people who have been through horrendous things, like escaped tribal genital mutilation, crossed the desert, by themselves as a child, to be able to teach women about awareness of these things, like that person, for example, found a tremendous strength of spirit to carry her forward, and so that she could do what she came here to do. So I want to teach you how to let that resilience of spirit into your physical life. So if you know you created your life, you can't blame anyone for anything. If you know you created your life, you know that everything in your life that triggers you is meant to trigger you so that you can let go of that reactive pattern. You can let go of impatience. You can let go of shutting your heart down. A reaction is not just screaming at someone who cuts you off in traffic. A reaction is closing your heart, withdrawing love. A reaction is ghosting someone. A reaction is disassociating during a conversation. A reaction is anything that is not presence, and whatever is communicated through presence, anything other than that is a reaction. So we have to embrace that if we're going to mutate into a being of light, that our soul needs to be triggered in certain ways. We need to be triggered in certain ways in order to be able to mutate that quality, the darkness within us. Darkness just meaning the part of us that, not a bad part, just the part of us that doesn't yet know it's the creator, right? If we don't know that we're the creator, we're going to react to and get angry and furious at our whole life. In my personal life, I've experienced a really long, drawn-out process that it squeegeed a lot of my reactions out of me, because it was a seemingly impossible process, an impossible situation that no matter how I tried to solve it in the physical world, it didn't move the situation. And according to Carl Jung, this was a complete synchronicity that I found this information. Carl Jung says that the unconscious will literally purposely set up an unsolvable problem so that the self can reveal itself, right? Essentially, you realize none of the tricks you play in the physical world, the lawsuits, the screaming, the name calling, none of those things is going to push the situation forward. So you have literally no choice but to surrender and trust and give up resisting the situation, right? So if we know that we create our life, we have to trust that the process of mutation that we're going through is the process that we need to go through. We have to have reverence for that. What does that mean practically and psychologically? That means that if somebody puts you down for being a late bloomer in life, or for not having achieved something yet in your life, or for not having a family, or for criticizing you for not being where they think you should be. You need to have the strength of spirit and the reverence of your own self to just be calm and say, okay, I get where you're coming from. Thanks for the feedback, but I completely trust where I am, who I am, the way things have unfolded. I see the bigger picture. I see that, like, for example, people criticize me for throwing away my law degree because I no longer practice law. But I see the bigger picture. I see that my consciousness put me through law school to teach me how to speak in a competent way, to carry the energy of rationality and competence when I discuss things that are oftentimes bizarre and metaphysical. It comes off in a very practical way because I think practicality helps people feel grounded and take action. So everything was perfect, right? Every relationship I had was perfect. Everything is perfect. Everything is perfect. So we have to have reverence. And again, on a psychological, practical level, we have to have the strength inside of us to be able to not necessarily fight people away, although sometimes you will need to fight people away. Sometimes that's the process of healing. Sometimes you'll need to kick someone out of your life, kick someone out of your house, right? When you wake up out of lifetimes of being a doormat or being in a battered housewife energy, and all of a sudden you realize you're in a dangerous situation, there's situations where your anger and rage is totally appropriate because maybe some people in your life are in a zombie sleeping denial consciousness. Like, for example, if you're trying to tell your family members that you were sexually abused and nobody believes you, like, the rage that you feel is totally normal. It's totally normal. You don't want to stay there forever, but you want to be able to say, no, I'm allowed to have these feelings, and I'll get to how the emotional body plays into this whole thing a little bit later. But we have to have reverence for our process and not assume that whatever is naturally happening to us is a bad thing. That acceptance of self helps us move forward. If we don't accept ourselves, we attract abusers because we abuse ourselves. One of the ways that we abuse ourselves is putting ourselves down, telling ourselves that we shouldn't be where we are, that we shouldn't have experienced what we experienced. I know too much. I'm a healer. I shouldn't be in this situation. I shouldn't be sick anymore. All of that is self-abuse. And if you treat yourself as a broken thing, you attract people that want to fix you. Period. Right? We attract things that treat us like we treat ourselves. So if there's people in your life that yell and scream at you and are your punisher and your reckoner, I would seriously ask myself, how am I doing that to myself? Right? So let's move on to the next level of, right, self-love or no longer being abusable. Do not be a victim to your own thoughts, to your own negative thoughts. And any unloving thought is a lie. I shouldn't be here. I should be healed already. I should be this. I should be that. I shouldn't have strong feelings. I shouldn't still be angry about this situation. Any of that is self-abuse. Why? Because life is trying to unfold in a process of mutation. If your mind thinks it's God and says, this shouldn't be happening, I shouldn't have a physical ailment anymore, I'm a healer. I shouldn't be in a relationship where someone's giving me a hard time anymore. I thought I learned about boundaries. Okay, maybe you haven't learned about boundaries yet. Why do we attract the same characters over and over? Well, it's because it's not only low self-worth, like I said in another video, we didn't develop whatever qualities we were supposed to develop, right? People call it, we didn't learn the lessons. I call it, we didn't develop the qualities that we were supposed to develop in that situation. I personally, for example, have had, up until just very recently, I have not exercised, I have not held my boundaries like in an iron-like way. I break my boundaries all the time, or I did. So that's on me. That's on me. I'll get into a situation where I know that it's not a situation I want to be in, and then I'll go along with something that I don't want to go along with, but that's on me, right? So I'm not going to punish myself and say, oh, I'm so disgusted with myself, I hate myself. I'm going to say, okay, so the next level is, I'm not going to choose a situation like that again. Or if I'm in a situation where my boundary is being tested, I'm going to hold to it like iron, right? So really sincerely ask yourself, what is the quality within me that I haven't developed yet, that I haven't executed on fully, that the universe is simply asking me to develop? That's all. But don't abuse yourself if you're still experiencing something unwanted. This is the process of evolution. You always want to do your best, acknowledging that you're not perfect, but while simultaneously intending to change. The trickster doesn't want you to believe that those two coexist simultaneously, but they do. My intention is to live from my heart, to honor myself, to honor others, to be empathic to others, but I also realize that I'm not perfect yet. Maybe in the future when I'm an ascended master, I'll be perfect, but I'm not perfect. So if I make a mistake, if I react, if I say something, if I act in a way from my ego, right, which is seduction, control, cruelty, power, arrogance, right, anything that isn't the soul, we all have an ego. So the process of uh, no longer feeding the ego is a process. So you have to be kind to yourself and say, all right, I made a mistake. I forgive myself. Being unforgiving of self is extreme self-abuse. And it's interesting that there's a body of work, a very well-developed body of work in Germany that has mapped out the cancer personality and people who develop different diseases and metaphysically how their personalities correlate to their ailments. And this goes to the dynamic between narcissists and empaths, where empaths are people that tend to develop disease processes more so than narcissists, because empaths have more negative self-talk. Oh, I'm a nice person, I'm kind, like anything like that I've done wrong, I need to beat myself up for. Anything that I should be angry about, like being abused, being raped, I shouldn't feel angry about those things. No, like I'm gonna be a good girl, I'm not gonna react. I'm gonna bottle it up. Therefore, the energy has nowhere to go but your own cells. And the reason why people that are in narcissistic personalities don't get sick as much is because their negativity is being expressed outward. It's not crashing in on itself. They don't usually tell themselves that they suck and they're horrible, even though their behavior is ultimately driven from a place of low self-esteem, right? The self-esteem manifests in different ways, but when we crash in on ourselves, when we're always telling ourselves that we should be somewhere we're not, that we're not good enough, and that can manifest even as in spiritual practice, like again, making a mistake or not being perfect. That perfectionism is deadly. If you don't think you're showing up as a perfect embodiment of your highest understanding of the truth and you make a mistake, you'll punish yourself somehow. It might just feel like your energy is down, you feel lethargic, you feel like there's no reason to live. If I'm not perfect, there's no reason to live. If I try hard and I'm not succeeding, there's no reason to live. Do you recognize this? So we don't want to be a victim to our own inner critic, right? If we have unconditional love for our process, it's pretty hard to attract abuse in life, right? Because if I have complete self-respect for myself, like I treat others like that and they treat me like that. Simple. So the next level is not being a victim to your emotional body. When you have a very intense awakening, the veil between the conscious and subconscious mind is destroyed. So everything that you haven't felt is going to be felt. Everything that you haven't felt. But even if you haven't undergone like a intense like awakening, you have to not be a victim to your emotional body. So you start, right, so let's say you're in a relational dynamic and something starts to get challenging. Ooh, it's getting challenging. Somebody just called me out on something, or I feel guilty about something I've done. Don't be a victim to that, right? Let's say it's guilt. If I was being a victim to guilt, I would let guilt own me all day. That's self-abuse. Oh, I'm a terrible person, I'm a terrible person, I'm a terrible person. That just perpetuates addiction, right? If I'm the cause, if I'm proactive, if I'm the cause and not the effect, I say, okay, I own what I did. I own what I did. I don't want to show up like that anymore. I don't want to live like this. Let me look at this. Let me be proactive. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, that's proactive. Let's say you start getting anxious, right? you start getting anxious. If you're a victim to your anxiety, your mind will come in and say, oh no, why is this still happening? Why is this still happening? Everything is so scary. Everything is so scary in life. No. If I was proactive with my anxiety, I would breathe. I would put my hands on my belly. I would sit down. I'd say, it's okay. I would use my breath. I would use whatever tools I have. I would be present with the anxiety. And I would also realize that beliefs create emotions, right? What am I anxious about? What are you anxious about? Ask yourself sincerely. Be proactive. Why am I creating anxiety? What do I believe about life? Like in my life, for example, I love giving real examples so that this is not theoretical. In my life, because I had cancer 12 years ago, something that I could technically get anxious about is it going to come back? Is it going to come back? If I have kids and it comes back while I have kids, like that would be so terrible, right? These are thoughts that came up in me recently because I was sincerely asking myself, like, is there any part of me that's pushing away the experience of having a family? And that came up for me, like, yeah, you're scared that you're going to lose everyone because you're going to get sick again. So I'm like, okay, instead of being a victim to that whole thing, I'm going to be proactive and say, all right, I can't change the past. I had that condition. All I can do is my best, take care of myself the best way I can, work with my consciousness the best way I can, be as kind to myself as I can, and I can choose to move forward and live, or I can choose to stay in this anxiety, period. I can choose to decide that I can handle my life, whatever comes in my life, whatever happens in relationship, whatever happens with my future kids, whatever happens with my body, I can decide that I will handle it. I'll handle it when it happens. That's being proactive, right? Being a victim to your anxiety might be covering it up with a drug, covering up with chain smoking, covering it up with overworking, right? If all of those things aren't changing the fact that you have chronic anxiety, you're being a victim to the anxiety. If you're being proactive with it, you work with it, you ask it questions, work with it in whatever way feels right to you, but just sincerely ask your higher self, how can I be proactive with my emotions? If you're a victim to your emotions, if you think they shouldn't exist, you try to fix them, try to distract yourself from them. Why do you think that people attracts an abuser that didn't seem like an abuser, or someone that, you're drawing qualities out of a person that are unkind? Is because you're not aware of your own stuff inside of you that's magnetically attracting stuff to you. Wouldn't you like to be aware of it so that what comes into your life is not a complete surprise to you? Right? If you have bottled up rage, right? If you're angry at yourself, if you haven't forgiven yourself, you're probably going to attract people who don't forgive you, who blame you for everything. If you're chronically guilty, you're going to attract people that blame you for everything. If you are chronically enraged, you will attract guilty, helpless people that you feel you're always attracting, like people that are powerless and helpless. But on some level, you must like that because you like to fix people, right? Being in the role of a savior or a fixer is not love. People don't need to be fixed. People need to be understood, heard, right? Vulnerability, the admission of my humanity. Being a victim to my human condition is trying to change it, trying to fix it, trying to pretend like it shouldn't exist. So how do you kill your own humanity? How do you gaslight yourself? How do you tell yourself, I shouldn't be angry about this, right? When you let it out, when you just let yourself be wherever you are, it'll change. That's the funniest thing. If I just let myself feel whatever I'm feeling about a situation, if I accept, for example, that I don't know what to do, I'm not going to be a victim to my confusion and run around with like a chicken with its head cut off. I'm going to say, you know what? I don't know what to do. That's my proactive choice. I don't know what to do in this situation, and it'll reveal itself when it reveals itself, period. I choose to feel peace with this, right? That's unabusable energy. I choose to feel peace with what I'm experiencing. So on the physical level, right, not being a victim on the physical level, realizing we have choices. If you were conditioned in this life or other lives to always feel like you never had choices, it's not going to even occur to you, for example, that you have the option to get divorced. If you're in a marriage that, or any situation, a business partnership, a friendship that feels really off to you, if you don't think you have choices, if you are believing the deception that you have no choice, it's not going to even occur to you that you have a choice. So I want to say this as loudly as I can. You have free will. You don't need to keep a friend you've had for 25, 30, 50, 80 years in your life just because they've been there the whole time if they're assholes to you. You don't need to continue to do business with people who you found out are in shady dealings with things. You don't need to stay in a marriage, right, just because you're afraid of the humiliation or whatever emotions you'd have to feel of getting divorced. You have free will, and you have to be able to say to yourself, whatever I choose to also accept that I can handle whatever emotions that are going to come with this choice. So if I leave that business partner and they smear me and they try to ruin my reputation, I have the strength of spirit that I can handle it. Fuck off. Say whatever you want about me, right? I have the strength of spirit that if I leave that person, that if I leave that friend and they, I don't know, they try to hurt me in some way, well, let them try. This is like, it reminds me of this image that I saw recently of the Buddha, an amazing author who wrote a really great book about Kundalini called the Kundalini Compendium. His name is Nevan Par. Really, really, really great book. He put on his Instagram this image of the Buddha sitting under the tree, activating his chakras, cleansing his chakras, getting ready for a Kundalini enlightenment, and everything tried to scare him. Right, on the root chakra, it was all the sexual temptations. In the fire chakra, it was the rage and the fire. And he just sat there calmly and said, come and go. You can come and go. Bye. Right, but when our rubber hits the road, we're not sitting under a tree. We're dealing with people, right? So this is the difference. We're not sitting under a tree, you know, in the Himalayas or wherever, in India, wherever all those sages were. We're in life dealing with humans, right? So making choices is a little bit different in the Western world. Realize that you have a choice, that you have the strength of spirit. If you want to choose something, if the light is coming through you in the form of a proactive energy called a choice, all you need to supply that choice, the funding, the experiences, wherever you need to go, the universe is supplying that desire with everything that is needed to fulfill it. But it's up to you to not be a victim, to not live in fear and say, I accept that if I make this choice, I can handle whatever emotions come with my choice, right? So you're not being a victim. You're deciding, you refuse to live in fear. You refuse to believe these thoughts. You refuse to succumb to the weight of the fear of loneliness or the fear of humiliation. No, refuse, right? So at the end of the day, if we trust the universe, we have reverence for our process, we understand that we create our reality, we understand that the pain of mutation is the pain that we chose to become more like the light, and we accept that, and we have the strength of spirit to almost to just have just unshakable reverence for who you are and unshakable acceptance for who you are. It becomes really hard to gaslight you. It becomes really hard to control you. It becomes really hard to manipulate you. If you mean your best, but you also simultaneously know that you're not perfect, it becomes really hard to guilt trip you. So I hope that this was helpful. These are the levels, right? From the soul level, mental, emotional, physical. These are the ways that we embody unabusable radiant energy. So I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you have a beautiful day.